Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking into Shotspotter. It's this gunfire detection technology that a lot of police departments are using now.
That's right. It basically involves putting up these special acoustic sensors around a city. They listen for loud noises.
And then algorithms figure out if it sounds like a gunshot.
Exactly. And if they think it is, they use triangulation from several sensors to figure out roughly where it came from, and boom, an alert goes to the police. The company is Sound Thinking, used to be called SST.
So for this deep dive, we want to understand really how ShotSpotter affects different people. We'll look at the tech itself, but mostly its impact on communities, drawing from, various sources with different viewpoints.
Yeah, and there have been concerns, especially since places like Chicago started using it heavily back in, 2018?
Right. Things like, does it lead to over-policing in black neighborhoods? How accurate is it really? And even concerns about police becoming, maybe, more hostile in areas with lots of alerts.
Okay, so let's break down the components first. How does it actually technically work?
Well, you mentioned the sensors. They're placed across the city, right? Not just randomly.
Correct. The idea is to get good coverage. When a loud, sharp sound happens, think fireworks, a car backfiring, or hopefully for the system's purpose, a gunshot. Nearby sensors pick it up.
And each one notes the exact time it heard the sound.
Precisely. That timing difference is key. Then the algorithms get involved. They analyze the sound profile, the acoustic signature.
Looking for that specific pattern of a gunshot.
Yeah, they're trying to filter out all the other city noise. If the algorithm flags it as a potential gunshot, then the system uses those different arrival times at multiple sensors.
To triangulate.
Mm-hmm.
Like GPS, but with sound waves hitting microphones.
That's a good analogy. It pinpoints the origin, but it doesn't stop there. The alert isn't automatic to the police, not quite.
Mm-hmm. What happens next?
It goes to a secure cloud system and to Sound Thinking's Incident Review Center. They have actual people, acoustic experts on duty 24/7.
So a human listens to.
Yes. They review the audio snippet linked to the alert and make a call. Is this likely actual gunfire or, construction noise, fireworks again?
It's interesting. Adds a human check. How fast does all this happen? Because the point is speed, right?
Absolutely. Sound Thinking says the whole thing from bang to alert on an officer's device takes under 60 seconds. That's their big claim.
Less than a minute. Okay. And the alerts sometimes have extra info, like automatic weapon fire or multiple shooters.
Yes, the system tries to analyze the sounds for patterns like that. The goal is to give police responding a bit more situational awareness before they arrive.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears. How does this technology actually impact different communities? Let's start with communities of color, because that's where a lot of the concern seems focused.
It really is. There was a Wired analysis using leaked sensor location data. It found something pretty stark. Nearly 70% of people living in neighborhoods with ShotSpotter sensors identified as Black or Latino.
70%? That's, wow. That seems very disproportionate compared to overall city demographics in many cases.
It does, and they gave examples. Like Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the city is, about 43% white overall? But in the ShotSpotter zones, only about 13% of residents were white.
And Fort Myers, Florida, showed a similar pattern.
Yeah, a much higher concentration of Black residents in sensor zones than in the city overall. This data really fuels the concerns from groups like the ACLU.
Right. The ACLU has been vocal about this potentially leading to over-policing. What's their argument exactly?
Well, they argue that putting this tech predominantly in minority neighborhoods kind of primes the police. It might make them more likely to expect trouble, leading to more stops, more frisks.
So the tech itself could inadvertently increase police interventions, even if no actual crime is confirmed.
That's the worry. And that these stops might then lead to arrests for, unrelated warrants or minor offenses that wouldn't have otherwise happened. The ACLU of Wisconsin found in Milwaukee the sensors were exclusively in predominantly Black and Latinx areas.
Exclusively. That's quite a finding. So what about the people just living their lives in these coverage areas? What's the impact on them day to day?
Well, one big thing is false alarms. We talked about the human review, but things still slip through. Or maybe the initial alert causes a police response anyway.
Like cars backfiring, fireworks, construction.
Exactly. That Northwestern study in Chicago is often cited. It found, get this, 89% of the alerts didn't lead police to find any evidence of a gun crime. 89%.
That's incredibly high.
And 86% led to no report of any crime. Think about the police resources. The ACLU calculated over 40,000 deployments in Chicago. Over 2 years, that basically went nowhere. dead ends.
40,000 dead-end deployments. That's a massive drain on resources, not to mention the constant police presence triggered by potentially nothing.
And it can be dangerous. Remember that incident in Chicago? Police responding to a Shotspotter alert, and they ended up firing at a kid who was just lighting fireworks.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that. And the initial police account was different, wasn't it?
It was. It highlights the potential for things to escalate badly based on these alerts, especially if they happen frequently in an area. It connects back to those early concerns in Chicago about increased police hostility.
And didn't the Wisconsin Supreme Court rule that a ShotSpotter alert itself could be enough for police to stop and frisk someone?
Yes, they ruled it constitutes reasonable suspicion. Critics argue this could just worsen racial disparities in who gets stopped by police.
Okay, so that's the impact on residents and communities of color.
Yeah.
What about law enforcement's perspective? How does sound thinking position this?
Well, sound thinking argues it's a crucial tool. They say it helps police respond more precisely directly to the scene instead of, say, canvassing a whole block.
So more targeted responses.
Right. And that officers arrive better informed, potentially faster, which should help victims or allow them to find evidence like shell casings. And they stand by their accuracy claims.
That 97% figure you mentioned earlier for 2019-2021.
Exactly. They maintain the system is highly accurate and false positives are low. They frame it as enhancing safety for everyone.
But there are counterexamples, right? Cases where it seems to have missed things.
Definitely. Southside Weekly reported on a shooting in Chicago, 55 rounds fired, and apparently ShotSpotter didn't generate an alert. That raises questions about reliability.
55 rounds missed.
Yeah. And the Wired analysis also suggested, based on the leaked data, that maybe 1 in 10 sensors were marked as broken, unreliable, or offline at the time. In Chicago, that was hundreds of sensors.
So reliability and maintenance seem to be issues too.
Seems so. And then you have incidents like one in Cincinnati. A ShotSpotter alert went off, police detained a guy nearby, searched him, found no gun, no evidence of a shooting, but they ran his name and found unrelated warrants, so he got arrested anyway. It shows how an alert, even potentially a false one, can still lead to someone getting caught up in the system.
How does sound thinking explain the placement, the fact that sensors end up concentrated in certain communities?
Their position is that placement isn't based on race at all. They say it's based purely on objective gun violence data provided by the police departments.
So they're saying, we put them where the police tell us the shootings are happening.
Essentially, yes. They also say they don't even tell the police the exact sensor locations for security reasons. And they emphasize ShotSpotter isn't surveillance. It doesn't record conversations. They point to a privacy audit by the NYU Policing Project to back that up.
Okay, so wrapping this up. We have this technology, ShotSpotter, designed ostensibly to fight gun crime quickly.
Right. Sound thinking promotes it as accurate, fast, helping police, saving lives.
But on the other side, we see significant evidence and concern about its disproportionate deployment in communities of color.
Yeah, and major questions about its real-world accuracy, the high rate of alerts that don't correlate to actual gun crime.
Leading to potentially wasted resources, unnecessary police encounters, and in some tragic cases, dangerous escalations.
Exactly. You have the company's claims versus the documented issues and the lived experiences in these communities. It's a real conflict.
It really makes you step back and think. When we talk about a technology enhancing public safety, whose safety are we actually prioritizing? And what does that enhancement look like on the ground?
That's the core question, isn't it? And what responsibility do cities, do policymakers, do we have to really dig into how these tools work and regulate them properly? It's definitely something to keep thinking about.